Okay, in honor of our next guest, I'd like to ceremoniously turn off something and then turn it back on. I'm afraid it gets this light. Or as George historically reminded us, how many thousands of times, turn it off, turn it on. George Riccardi was hired by Bruce Craven as Assistant Information Systems Manager, was promoted shortly thereafter as MIS Manager, and began reporting to me in August of 2001. He became Senior Manager, and then in 2006, Director of MIS and Internet Services. On July 8, 2005, under George's steadfast guidance, we signed an agreement with Clovatech International to install our new ERP. It may be the biggest investment of money and manpower ever conducted by F.A. Davis, and without George, it never would have gone so smoothly. Hey, how was George supposed to know that the system was incompatible with partial shipments, consignment buyouts, textbook ancillaries, the agency plan, migrating addresses, a Great Plains integration, and a Sales Logics integration? Just turn it off and turn it on. Did I mention their nomadic ESL training staff? How could George know that Sabine would take 6 months to get a U.S. cell phone, that Cornelia would go on maternity leave permanently, that Olaf would go on paternity leave permanently, and that Nigel would have to gamely confront Uli with a desperate cry for help in the brick room to finally yield the likes of the coveted Mateus? Turn it off, turn it on. The value of George's even-tempered nature has helped us through many scrapes. When ambushed by crashes and threats to ruin our informational stability, his steady hand has been a wonderful, calming influence. How does George stay so calm? Perhaps it's the practice he gets when he is able to multitask. For instance, when George hired Brian Krause in January of 1998, it was a group interview held at the agency's office. Brian had prepared intensely and was ready to impress. Halfway through the interview, Brian could see that George had dozed off. Brian was mortified. He thought, how can I get a job if I just put the director of MIS? Am I that unimpressive? Turn it off, turn it on. It works so many different ways, and it can speak volumes about George's calming influence in the organization once he wakes up and gives you the job offer. George has been a very successful catalyst for the company's high level of social interaction. Many may not realize or remember George's push to make the summer solstice what it's become today. Whether it's his regular departmental birthday lunches, the amazing prizes that he coerced from our vendors, to make the raffle a special event, the MS City to Shore Bike-a-thon, the many games at Broad and Pattison, or just the nearest watering hole. Jack has a knack for bringing people together. I'm sorry, George. You do too. George parlayed to change the summer to winter hours in not one, but 2 events. Last half-day Friday at, let's say, the Reading Terminal, and then, let's say, the first fall Friday with a pizza lunch in the brick room with some wholesome entertainment. One year, George decided to show an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. For those of you that don't know Curb, the topic area is getting rather salty. And to test the sensitivity and tolerance of the viewing audience. In other words, maybe, George, you should turn it off and this time leave it off. After a hush filled the room and the episode grinded to a halt, George was heard saying, I didn't know that was going to be in there. time has passed, it is widely believed that our statuesque crusader, the Admiral of the Green Brigade, was the alter ego of George. I came, I went, I conquered. We have no proof, of course. All that's left are several photos of the Admiral, sent randomly to us that were taken of him on the median of Broad Street, outside Citizens Bank Park, outside the Link, near the front steps of W.B. Saunders, on the Delaware Riverbank, next to the Logan Fountain, the Curtis Building, and on this very podium right here 7 years ago when the room was empty, though fully decorated as it is today. That photo was captioned, "I came to address the great assembly of independent publishing, but alas, I found myself alone. Where has everyone gone, or did someone purposely give me the wrong time?" That envelope was hand-delivered to me during the cocktail hour of that year's party. While the Admiral was touring, there were several phone messages left for him. The Sheraton called to tell him he had left his ID on the podium that previous night. Jack left him a message to ask him if he needs a parking spot, and George, yes, George, called him and left this. "I told you, only one night at Delilah's. Send your T&E receipts to Bob Skeng." The Admiral has apparently retired. His whereabouts appropriately unknown, but the mysterious legend continues to help us overcome the extended grief of losing the finally appointed outpost he defended, the 1969 version of the Green Room. George has certainly been a wonderfully reliable companion to us all. But it took one of George's first sales meetings at Seaview to understand how enduring that companionship could be.
Shaking his head no.
I should have known of George's endurance when Neil, at the time our sales meeting suite's mayor of midnight, took time out to explain to me what a good guy George is. And in case I forgot, he would tell me again. Evidently, Neil had forgiven George for wiping out Neil's hard drive during a transfer on George's very first day. A few years before, and we know Neil well enough to know that he just doesn't forgive that easily. That Seaview meeting became famous for many things, and among them was the first, and I hope last time, Quarters, the drinking game, was widely and vigorously contended in the hospitality suite. As the wee hours became smaller and the defeated contestants retired as gracefully as possible, it hit me. Neil's persistent gloating about George finally makes sense. He finally found somebody that can keep up with him. As the final four sat alone in the suite at God knows what time, Neil, George, and I gazed at the previously spunky remaining contestant, who has since left the company. To protect him, let's just call him Joe. Joe, our assumed name, was contemplating George's decision to move from beer to tequila. George barked, "Are you in or out?"
No.
Joe stared at the shot glass full of Mexico's finest. "In or out?" And in one motion, it was down the hatch. As my quarters continued to bounce offline, Joe began listing. "In or out?" Then stumbling, then disappearing in the head, then slamming the door shut behind him. The muffled sound of Joe's discomfort radiated through the suite, at which George emphatically intoned, "He's out." Stoically, the game went on while Joe provided a steady chorus of background music. So when I say it is a companionship that endures, it is a companionship that outlasts everybody. George, thank you for bringing your spirited sense of family to the F.A. Davis mix. You've probably done as much as anyone to advance Davis's sense of family, and thank you, George, for a memorable 20 years.